Hi everyone, Michael Elliott here with Between Two Mammoths. I'm here in the Lyceum today on a cold January day with Tania Diaz from the class of 2013. Tania is here visiting with sophomores as part of a sophomore summit that's introducing about 300 sophomores to a lot of resources about thinking about their future beyond Amherst. Tania is the Global Vice President for AI Adoption and Governance for IKEA. And so she's here today to talk to us about that role, what that means. I suspect not too many hex wrenches are involved, but maybe. So thank you, Tania, and welcome to Between Two Mammoths.
Yeah, thank you, and thanks for having me here. It's really special to be here.
Well, so let's start in with that mouthful of a title.
Yes.
You work on AI adoption and governance for a company that many of us know quite intimately. What does it mean you actually do?
Essentially, I lead three main parts for IKEA. AI education, so what do our employees need to know about AI and how do we upskill them continuously? AI adoption, which is how do we make sure our employees are using AI in good ways, and ethical and responsible ways? And then AI governance, which actually means responsible AI. So IKEA a couple years ago said that we want to be a leader not only in being digital and using AI, but actually doing it ethically and responsibly.
So now you're back and you're talking to sophomores, and I got to listen in on some of the things you were talking yesterday in one of our big keynote sessions, advice that you were giving them. And there were a couple of terms that you really threw out that you thought were essential, or think are essential, as we think about the emerging workforce and what the workplace will look like in the next 10 to 15 years. And one of them was the word judgment. Say why do you think judgment will matter so much, and how students might be thinking about how they cultivate their sense of judgment during their time at Amherst?
AI and other technologies, but mostly AI, is accelerating just the creation of output, it's quantity over quality in a way. But the reality is the key will not be in the creation of output and how quickly you can do something, it will be on how good it will be. And that will really come down to human judgment. And really that is what we need to be cultivating, is how do we become experts in something or many things, but really not because you're going to regurgitate knowledge, but because you know how to apply that knowledge in the best ways. And that refinement of judgment, which is deeply humanistic and requires not just knowledge in one discipline or one subject, but many. It's like being able to hold many truths at the same time. That is what we'll need to be developing as people. And you have no better place to do that at Amherst.
That's great.
Really.
That's great. You also talked yesterday about the power of curiosity. And I'm curious, how do you feed your own sense of curiosity, and why is that so important to you?
I was a Green Dean for a couple of years after Amherst.
Right.
And
working in admissions.
Working in admissions, yeah. And the first question I asked after a couple of years, I was asking, we're recruiting students to Amherst, which is in a way a very classic form of education, a timeless form of education. I thought to myself, is this the kind of education we will need in the future? Are we preparing the students in the right ways? And so I asked the question, I had no idea what the answer was, and so I decided I needed to learn more. And so I got the opportunity to go work in China for a couple of years through an Amherst connection. And then I got there and I started asking more questions. I was like, okay, yes, technology is going to transform education, but actually it's going to transform every part of our society, because at the time, China, and still is, such a technologically advanced society. And so that's when I saw, but wait a minute, there's increasingly more AI in society in the future, and there's a gap between people that know and understand where technology is going and everyone else, who are actually the consumers of technology. And so that's when I thought, so it really matters, how do I get everyone else involved in the technology conversation? What do they need to know? And how do we make the right decisions to apply AI in our society? And so that's when I got into AI ethics. And so anyway, I can trace my whole career to just asking questions, honestly, and then finding platforms to be able to answer those questions. And Amherst really lets you explore the questions that you're really deeply passionate about, and that society doesn't pressure us to say, that's not the right question you should be asking, or why are you spending your time? You're not going to make money. You really, you got to take all that aside and really pursue what really you're deeply curious about, because that is, I think, how you end up, making an impact, is, being deeply curious about the things you care about.
Well, your deep curiosity has led you on this incredible journey, and you're now at IKEA. And since I have you, I want to end with a really important last question about IKEA and your role there. Let's talk about the meatballs. Do you, as a member of management, do you have special access to the meatballs? Are there special meatballs? What's the story? Tell us everything you can tell us about the meatballs.
The meatballs are always going to be at IKEA, but we've now gone vegetarian as well, so we have a vegetarian option because
Big tent?
Yeah, well, it's because it's part of becoming more sustainable, in fact, and we're trying to see how can we incentivize people to, care more about having the vegetable alternative because it is more eco-friendly. But
Tania Diaz, values driven to the end.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for coming back to Amherst. Thank you so much
course.
for spending some time with our students, and thank you especially for being today on Between Two Mammoths.
Of course, thanks for having me.